When people attack Islam, they almost always cherry-pick Quranic verses out of context. They quote one half of a sentence and ignore the lines before and after it. The very lines that explain that the verse is about self-defense, about being attacked first, and about restrictions that prevent Muslims from going beyond justice. Take the verse they misuse most. Kill them wherever you find them. They never read the sentence before it. Fight in the cause of God those who fight you, but do not transgress. God does not love the aggressors, 2:190. The Quran sets a rule. Only defend yourself and do not be the aggressor. Then they ignore the sentence after it. But if they stop fighting you, then you must stop. There is no aggression except against the oppressors. Another verse they abuse is 9:5. The so-called sword verse. They pull 5 words out of a chapter describing a specific treaty violation where Muslims were betrayed during a sacred peace period. The very next verse says, if they repent, if they seek peace, then let them go their way. God is forgiving and merciful. Even in war, the Quran commands mercy. And they ignore verses like 68 entirely. God does not forbid you from being kind and just to those who do not fight you. So the truth is simple. Quranic verses used against Islam are almost always about defense, responding to attacks, protecting the persecuted, and restricting retaliation. Islam did not permit Muslims to start wars. It gave rules to limit the violence that others started. Meanwhile, the same critics overlook explicit violence found in the Bible itself. Even with full context, the Bible contains passages where God commands the killing of infants, such as in 1 Samuel 15:3, Hosea 13:16, and Numbers 31:17. These verses speak directly about killing babies, not metaphorically, not symbolically, yet the blame is still placed on Islam. The Quran, however, never commands the killing of children, ever. Any verse about fighting is tied to self-defense, to specific battles, and always with conditions. Do not transgress. Do not harm non-combatants. Do not harm women, elders, or children. But critics remove these crucial lines and present fragments, as if they stand alone. And then they mock the Prophet's marriage to Aisha, while ignoring their own scriptures. Rebecca was likely very young when married to Isaac, and early Christian sources describe Mary as a young girl, possibly in her early teens. Historically, even outside religion, child marriage, as they claim, existed in Europe and America well into the late 19th century. In fact, in the United States, several states allowed marriages at ages 10, 12 as late as the 1800s, and the age of consent in Delaware was 7 years old in 1880. So before accusing Islam, people should examine their own texts, their own history, and their own societies. The double standards are obvious, and the truth is not hard to find. Whenever global conflicts are discussed, certain labels are thrown around selectively. Muslims defending their own homes and dignity are instantly given the T word, while powerful governments invading other nations for resources or political gain are rarely described the same way. That's not morality, that's narrative. History is clear. The wars in Palestine, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and the political violence in parts of Africa were driven by geopolitical interests, not by ordinary people of any faith. And in Africa, Muslims and Christians alike are suffering. Yet media often frames it as something religious to simplify the story. Public opinion is shaped by people who repeat oversimplified messages without understanding global history. Valentina Gomez, for example, has repeatedly used the T word to describe Muslims in her public commentary, reducing an entire community to a stereotype instead of engaging with the complex reality. This kind of language influences audiences who never study their own nation's histories of colonization or military intervention. If people fighting for their own land and human rights are condemned instantly, but governments crossing oceans with armies are not, then we're not dealing with justice. We're dealing with selective morality. True fairness means applying the same standard to everyone, no matter how uncomfortable it is. One of the biggest misconceptions is that Islam was spread by the sword. But the facts, not emotions, tell a completely different story. If Islam were spread by force, then the largest Muslim country on earth today wouldn't be Indonesia. Indonesians are not Arabs. They were never conquered by Muslims. and Islam reached them purely through traders known for honesty, humility, and character. Entire kings and communities accepted Islam because they saw fairness, compassion, and the dignity taught by the Quran. The Quran itself makes forced conversion impossible. It says clearly, "There is no compulsion in religion." 2.256. Faith based on fear is meaningless. Islam requires sincere surrender of the heart, not forced words. Even in battle, Muslims were forbidden from forcing anyone to convert. Wars were political, not religious, and no mass conversions ever took place after battles. Historical records show something else. The major forced conversions in history came from European colonial powers, especially in South America, Africa, and parts of Asia. Indigenous tribes were wiped out, native religions erased, and millions converted under pressure, threat, or occupation. These are not opinions. They are documented facts taught in world history. So yes, conflicts happened in Islamic history, like in every civilization, but Islam itself did not spread by the sword. It spread by character, justice, and the message resonating with people's hearts. That is why, despite all the propaganda, Islam is still the fastest growing religion, not by force, but by choice. People choose to revert every single day, more than any other faiths today, due to its clarity and rationality and for all questions being answered, leaving no room for any doubt.